Calling the meeting to order at 1:01. Douglas, do we have a first order to finalize some of the minutes? I think we had minutes that were sent around from two meetings ago, right? We didn't have meetings yet for the last minutes yet for the last meeting. Is that correct?
Are those in your packet?
No.
No, that's.
You handed them out in person at the last meeting.
That'll be at your regular meeting.
Yeah,
That's not
our
on,
regular
that's
meeting.
not on for today.
Okay,
So do that at your next meeting.
okay. Then we can move right into our agenda. And the first agenda items is citizens' comments. We have for the first time citizens present. Does any one of the two citizens present have a comment?
Okay. I'll introduce Russell Gardner is with our office. He's a surveyor for us and wanted to come sit in on the meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Well, with that, I should probably also welcome CSE to the meeting. Thank you for coming again.
You're welcome.
And we are hoping, obviously, to see a lot more of you as time goes on. But we do realize that you have to make a trip and appreciate your time you're spending with us.
No problem.
Agenda item number 3 is new business. Under number A, we have the discussion with Stephen from CSE on the definition of minimum healthy beach. That was an agenda item we already had at our last meeting, but it's a little bit contested, so we didn't finish the discussion on it. Any proposals of how we're gonna approach this topic at today's meeting?
I'll just ask a question because I think the last time we talked, the line that they were using as, I forget if it was a setback or a baseline, but it was close to the structures, which made it look like the middle of the island had 200 feet of beach, but they didn't. They had 10 feet of beach. And so my question is, are we going to, or are you going to, or is someone gonna, like, maybe move that line to the dunes where we can really get a feel for start the beach at the dunes instead of at the structure? I mean, on either end of the island, the north and the south end, I mean, there's almost no dunes at all. And so the structure and that is the same point, but it won't be the same in the middle of the island. So how do we adjust for that? It can't be a straight line on this.
Well, also, Stephen, in this report, CSE report, that was sorry, so many of these. I don't have the first page. You mentioned that there's a management line for the defining a healthy beach. And it's either the seaward side of oceanfront houses or a dune line. So
Right.
I'm getting the idea that we're measuring this on using oceanfront houses as our starting point and not the dunes, which means that
Right, that's what I was saying.
the
Yeah.
recreational beach is not considered when we're defining a healthy beach. And I handed out this to you. I took this picture at 53rd Avenue, and I used to exaggerate, there's a mile of brush and sand between the house and where these beach chairs are. So it's my understanding, and I'd like for you to comment on it, please, that you would deem this to be a healthy beach, needing no action.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was talking about. Same thing, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a summary of slides of kind of all the issues that we talked about last time, and then I did some research. Would it be helpful to go through that and then have Stephen kind of jump in?
Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
Just don't make
Okay.
it too long, your
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah.
It looks like a half
No
an hour
problem.
presentation by itself.
Yeah, I'll talk fast. A lot of it's just backup. So the prior committee originally chose 9th Avenue for sort of this minimum healthy beach definition. If you look at it in the terms of the way this committee's hoping to define it, it's about 150 beach from the OCRM baseline to like the wet line, which is pretty close to Hilton Head's definition of 200 feet. To the mean high tide water line. But when you look at the cubic yards definition of that and try and apply it elsewhere, what I'm finding is it ignores the height of the beach at the toe of the dune, which is critical for protection of property. And it also counts cubic yards of sand all the way out to 100 feet into the ocean. And my concern is that it's leading to the wrong decisions. When I looked at County Park, it showed a deficit in the August data if you apply that 360 number to it. But they actually have 172 feet of nice dry sand beach for recreation there. It's actually more beach than 9th Avenue. So I don't really understand the correlation between the cubic yards and what we're trying to go for, which is a recreational beach. The other thing that we've kind of already mentioned today is that it's including 50 to 130 feet of private property. I looked kind of across the whole entire island and did the averages and the mins and max. So 50 to 130 feet of private property, things that are pools, yards behind fences, et cetera, that residents and tourists can't really use, and it's inconsistent with the law. So that's why I'm struggling with the definition. I put the next page, just shows you what the county parks, this is from Stephen's appendix for the 2025 report. The heavy line is the August line. And so you can see that on the bottom chart, it is below the 360 cubic yards per foot. But if you look at the top chart, they have, I think the mean high tide water line on this chart is like 2.5 feet. So they are well above that 2.5 feet, and they have a nice slope of the beach, and they've got tons of dry sand beach. So again, that just makes me think that we have a problem with the measurements. The next page, I went out because we had a high tide of 5.8 on Friday night, so I went out Saturday morning and attempted to measure.
This is the work you did together with John, right? So there were 2 committee members on the beach?
Nope,
I
the
was
one
there
that
this
was,
time.
Oh, you were there another
not this time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
I had a fever and chose not to expose anyone on the committee to my fever. So these are the numbers when the tide, when John and I did it, I think the tide was 5.3. So the tide this time was 5.8. So we're getting a little bit closer to those 6-foot tides. And basically the summary is, the best part of the island is at 3rd Avenue, which is 83 feet of beach. But if you put a dune back in there, that's going to, take up about 20 feet. So that's really going to be 63 feet of dry sand beach. That's the best. At 104 Ocean, that property doesn't have sandbags up. He's going to lose volume of his private property at a higher tide. Where all the sandbags are in the hundreds area, again, there's 0 beach whatsoever. I would recommend that we keep sandbags there because you got higher tides coming in April. 3rd Avenue, 63, 6th Avenue, 50 feet would be 35 if you put a dune back. 7th Avenue was 70 feet, 50 feet if you put the dunes back. Wild dunes hotspots, there's basically no beach whatsoever. At Grand Pavilion, this was like a week before, March 14th, I was out there. They had over 200 feet of beach, so they would easily, in our new definition, qualify as a healthy beach, but you can see that it has eroded and it probably has some erosion coming towards it. So again, most of what he's calculated down here is minimal deficits. But then if you look at, if you really want a recreational beach of 150 feet of dry beach, we're nowhere near there. The next page just shows how much property he's including that is private property. The range was 50 to 130 feet, but it's actually more than that if you include in the hundreds, 177 feet at one point. Again, that's sand that people can't use in recreation because it's all private property. So that's all the notes I have on the minimum healthy beach, and then I move into renourishment, which we can save.
Let's do that when we talk about that in a minute.
Could I add one thing?
Yeah,
Do you mind? So, Stephen, I know that you're limited, as we all are, historically, on funds available, because your job is to figure out what a healthy beach is based on funds we can afford. So before we jump into this, I thought it might make sense to talk about, now that the sand pricing is coming so much less than we expected, if we were to use that sand and maximize, instead of minimizing it based on the funds available, but instead, if we said, let's do optimal. Let's redefine optimal, not based on cost, but based on what's optimal. So disregard cost as if it doesn't exist, figure out what we want to do. If that's going to change everything in all of your measurements and all of the things you're looking at doing, maybe we could talk about that for a moment, because it might be that where we are today and talking about, looking at what's in front of us might be moot if the plan of the city is to maximize the sand and actually to do it right, without that consideration. We've never had the ability to do that. I don't think any of the other renourishments, we didn't have this kind of low cost with the other renourishments, so we've never seen what would happen. And I'm wondering your opinion about whether or not, if we did that, could that create a much longer period of time without having to do the renourishment under that scenario? And I thought maybe it makes sense to start there.
Okay.
Stephen
To me,
has
there
about
were-
100 questions, so you can
Yeah,
choose which one you want to
I kinda-
answer first.
Yeah, I like to start on the path. And I agree with you completely, and let's have that conversation here in just a little bit, but I think it's a little separate from the minimum healthy discussion first. And if I can, I'd like to, we've looked at a lot of different scenarios. We spent a lot of time the past couple of weeks trying to go through some of the data and provide some information that's difficult to present. It's hard to just show a map on paper, and it's not exactly easy to go through it on a PowerPoint and some of this stuff. So I'll share my screen some, and forgive me for kind of having to jump back and forth a little bit doing that. But for the past 20 years, the city has kind of taken the approach that we're trying to protect the structures. And the conversation so far today has been a different management strategy than what has been done before. And that's fine and appropriate. It's just a different calculus. So when
It's fair to say that you are just trying to execute what the city told you. You're not making up these
some of
strategies
it,
on your own. or do
I'm
you?
not going to blame the city for anything. It's the first project done in '07. Half of Wild Dunes was literally falling in the ocean at that point. I mean, the conditions back then were sandbags were from the Grand Pavilion all the way up to Shipwatch, with zero low tide beach, much less high tide beach. That was the initiation of the first large scale project. So we were dealing with a set of circumstances there that we were pushing for money to do the initial project, and it was very reactionary. We were brought in 2007 in July. We did our first report, which I have a feasibility study. I passed out a primer that's just some background information that our company put together several years ago. I've got some other literature that our company has put together for Wild Dunes specifically, that if you're curious, I'll leave those documents here.
Please do.
But it goes through the erosion history of the island and the processes. And while history is great, changing history might not matter as much in what we're doing looking forward, because a lot of the studies that have been done in the past, especially at the East End, said that it was losing 30 or 40,000 cubic yards per year, or historically going back long enough, it's been accretional. That's obviously not the case anymore, where we're losing 100,000 or 200,000 per year. So we're having to adjust both the calculus that goes into a project design, but if now the city is being more proactive in not just, okay, we're trying to make sure houses aren't falling into the water, and that's when the city feels like it's justified to use these public funds for it. But now we're looking at a 200-foot wide recreational beach up and down the island. It's a completely different calculus. And it's not a right or wrong, it's just a different strategy. When we say what is the minimum healthy beach condition, the way we have termed that is what condition are we willing to accept as the minimum condition before a project is done at that point. Not what is the minimum what is a normal condition? So like the idea of having a recreational beach is great and we want to promote that. Is there a minimum condition that at that point, we tell the city that you need to step in and actually implement a project? So to some point, you don't want that minimum healthy condition to be a ideal condition. It's the minimum healthy condition. And we used to call it the ideal profile volume, and I didn't like that because that's more a desired condition that you're happy with every day. A minimum condition really needs to be kind of that last point where you say, okay, now I'm not willing to live with this. It's a threat to houses. We've lost too much, rental fees, whatever it may be. And all that is a starting point. So whether you measure it from the structure line or the dune line, it's really, you can look at all the engineering you want to and say, well, we want a dune that will protect against a Category 4 storm, hitting at high tide. So you can do it that way. Or you can say, we like having 2 rows of dune fields, and this is kind of the standard that we like. And that's kind of the approach we took when we were looking at what condition volumetrically, and that relates to the distance. They're somewhat analogous. They're very analogous, but so what condition do we consider the point where it's minimally healthy? And that's where we looked at 9th Avenue. And that's a spot, and I know I'm repeating myself from a couple weeks ago, where there was multiple rows of dunes. The beach has been able to withstand modest storm events. So when Matthew or Irma came through, they eroded the beach back, but no structure was ever threatened, no pools were ever threatened in that location, not up and down the aisle, but in that particular location. So that was kind of what we used as a model for a minimally healthy condition. And then you build off of that with, okay, we know at the end of our project life, we want to be there or greater. So how much excess sand do we need to add so that we have 8 years or 10 years or however many years of healthy beach above that? And then, some years it may be 200, some years it may be only 100 feet, but it wouldn't be at a point where you would say the city needs to spend money to do it right now. You'd wait till it got back a little bit further. So you're reducing the long-term management cost of placing sand.
So it's a trigger.
It would be the
Right.
trigger
Yeah.
to implement the management solution.
And I think that's very helpful for our committee's discussion because we want to recommend to the city a new approach about thinking about this. And it's good to talk about what an ideal beach would look like and what's the minimum beach requirement that looks like, at which point in time the city probably should be getting active.
Well, also, if you look at Hilton Head, they don't have these crisis situations that we continually have, because they have 200 feet of dry sand in front of their
Right.
dunes. So the houses are protected, which is great, we all want that, but there's a reason they're protected, because they have a healthy dry sand beach.
We're way behind the 8 ball here.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of getting to the minimum.
In some senses, you are, but in other senses, you are in a different location. Your beach is different than Hilton Head's. You have different physical parameters that control how your beach erodes, and Hilton Head does not have the same type of shoal attachment that's specific to the north end. The south end is another different scenario. So while you can look at some comparisons, you can't make a one-to-one comparison between Isle of Palms and Hilton Head. And also they have, for 30 or 40 years, they've had a much healthier financial system in place where they get $15 million a year. So honestly, the money of these projects is not, I'd say not a concern to them, but it's a different calculus than we've been dealing with over the past 20 years. Not that we don't need to adjust ours to
Right, like
get to
what
that
Dan
point.
said, we
Right.
should be looking at what.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get to what that looks like. We have
Right.
different scenarios to look at. But the other thing with this minimum healthy condition is it's a tool and a guideline, but especially on this island, you have to look at the bigger picture too. Or you have to adjust these numbers up so high that you take any risk out of it. And that's
Okay, let's do
possible
it.
to do.
Let's do it.
But like at the east end, you may have 300 feet of dry sand beach.
Wait, I'm
And
sorry,
it-
which is the east end?
North
end.
Broad Dunes end. I use north and east here.
I noticed.
Yeah,
I'm learning.
yeah, and I'm sorry for that. I can't get northeast out in one word.
Okay, no,
But there, you may have 300 feet of dry sand beach, which looks great, but you also, depending on where you're at in the shoal cycle, you may be gaining 200 the next year, or you may be losing 200 that year.
So it seems like maybe, going back to the conversation, will come in a few minutes, maybe what we can talk about doing is changing the trigger. If we use the additional sand to move the minimum healthy beach, understanding we have a sale right now, so let's do it at this point, and then the trigger will be moved out, and then the next time we need a renourishment, it doesn't get back to this old minimum
Right.
healthy, it just goes.
Right.
Yes, so that.
And that's one way, I guess you'll discuss that with some of the ideas that you have.
Yeah, so the ideal scenario.
But I think,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
I think that we need to, I'm sorry, I think that we need to change our trigger definition though, because if you look at the chart that he has on the minimum healthy beach, it's showing the south end as above the triggers. And it doesn't make sense to me because our beach, a lot of the sand is way, way, way out.
Yeah.
600, 800, 1,000 feet out into the ocean, and that's counted in the calculation. And what you see when you look at the beach is that it's a low, flat beach, and that every time the tide goes up, it just keeps coming in higher, and we don't have dunes because they've been destroyed. Now, some people put dunes out there themselves, and then those got destroyed. And then Isle of Palms took sand from the Army Corps project and put dunes back, and those got destroyed. So here we are showing as not a trigger for a minimum healthy beach. And I just have to say that I don't think this definition is working for us, and I think we need to change.
So the trigger and I guess I would just interject by saying that a lot of the discussions about minimum healthy beach came from the ad hoc committee, and as Stevens described, it was intended to create a trigger, and the trigger that goes along with those, and there's a handful of them in their recommendation, and it's when 1 mile of the shoreline is projected to get to the minimum healthy beach profile within 12 months. So that was what that was supposed to, we're every 6 months, we're getting reports. And we're kind of just flying by the seat of our pants on, well, what does this mean? Does this mean, have we met a condition that says, okay, beach consultant, let's file applications now? And that was the entire basis of establishing that minimum healthy beach, is it gave the city, the managers, the insight to say, okay, we've been here before. We know that when it gets to a point when 1 mile will be in this condition in the next 12 months, it's time to file things now.
Yeah.
So County Park is showing as a deficit cubic yards, it's under the 360 cubic yards per foot, but they have a beautiful beach there. And there's no concern in my mind to structures or anything like that. If we're all about just protecting structures, which I don't think we should be, I think we should be about a recreational beach for tourism. But so if you use his definition, then we should be renourishing County Park and not the south end. Does that make sense?
Let me clarify something for you. I believe the chart that you provided there came from our monitoring report.
It's your Appendix A.
Yeah, that report was not referencing volumes from the structure line. Historically, in our monitoring reports, we pick a location on the dunes and measure everything from kind of where the dune stops, because especially in the very healthy sections of the island, we don't walk across 200 feet of dune field to get survey data in there. So when the calculation for the minimum healthy beach volume is in a different document and references the actual distance from the structure. So in that report where you see distance from baseline, the baseline there at the county park, we would actually have to be calculating probably another 150 feet of dune volume that you're not seeing in this number. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, and this would show as a beach condition healthier than the minimum healthy beach volume relative to the structure line. So I understand what you're saying, but yeah,
that's an excellent point that it brings up, that it would be beneficial to be using terminology like, if our trigger is going to be 150 feet of beach from the OCRM baseline to the mean high tide water line, if we just throw that out, then it would be nice to be able to see that in our monitoring reports. Or if we're going to do it from a structure line, then show the structure line instead of the, the baseline, which is really not the OCRM baseline, but a measurement baseline. Because it's really hard, like the average person can't figure out how much have I lost and are homes going to be in trouble or not. And it took me hours to go through all this stuff.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of information, and if that.
But it's not presented in a way
presented
that's
well.
digestible.
And I understand that
Yeah.
with that, this whole ideal concept for Isle of Palms is not something that's been used in monitoring reports before, and it hasn't been kind of even kind of finalized by, this committee. So once it is, or we can show it any way we want. We have other documents that we provided to the city that discuss this when we were going through the alternatives with the ad hoc committee. And we will be happy to make any of those kind of changes. If I can share my screen, Josh, do you have my screen up there? Okay. I can kind of go, we'll show you some of the lines of what this looks like, and this handout will relate to that, but again, it gets very difficult to kind of show some of this stuff, so give me just a second to kind of walk through it. What we did is we tried to take the comments from the last meeting and incorporate those into some graphics and calculations. What's shown here is the blue line is the structure line that we calculated our minimum healthy beach volumes for last year with the beach committee.
Can you zoom in on like a property?
I can zoom in
There
here.
it is.
The
Yeah, that's
top
good.
one.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
It looks black in this.
Was,
Can someone share this, can someone share the information with me as well somehow?
You would have to join the team's group.
I would have to join the Teams group. Can you send me a link to do that from that email?
Well, or could that,
Or you could
could
just-
that screen become
when,
the,
You can take me off, please.
could that be what's shown on Teams meeting? This can't do that.
Stephen would have to join.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll send
forgive me here.
Wendy, he'll try to join Stephen to your meeting, then he could do it.
Thank you.
See if that comes through. While we're talking, and Wendy, if you want me to wait till I get that, I can, but we'll go ahead and try to get through some of this. But the gray line here is our survey reference line that we are rephrasing, not from our survey baseline. It's just an imaginary line that we have digital monuments, so we survey these lines every year, and we've done that since 2009 at the south end of the island. The blue line is a line that we created last year that is just an approximation of the structure line, the seaward end of the structures. It does not account for all the pools. It was just taken from the seaward side of the houses. And it's generalized to the extent where we're not moving in and out every house, because that makes the data tend to look a little off when you're changing things very quickly. Josh, just let me know when you sent that. Did you already send it? Okay. There we go. See if I can get this. Okay. All right, Wendy, can you see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
I don't know what's coming through on my,
Mute your machine.
Yeah.
I did. Got my volume all the way down.
Or can you mute your mic on the Teams? Oh, right.
That's all the way down.
Wendy?
Yeah, what?
Do we need to call somebody to check?
Slight technology glitch.
But maybe she could just, do you have an iPad? You can just bring up the meeting from the general public and see the slides? Right, 'cause
Turn the mic all the way down.
Check.
Stephen, would it be easier to just email me?
I've got the volume all the way down. Wendy, can you try to mute yourself real quick and see if that works? Test? No. Sorry, I don't know how to, oh, you know what? It might be my, I'm on a computer at my office. How about now? No.
Well, we may have to go forward with venue not seen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's,
How about now? Oh, you got it, Josh. Thanks.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I think we're good now. Sorry about that. I'm connected to computers in Columbia and,
You were at the red line. The red line is what?
okay. So the blue line is our structure line. The red line is the BCM line. And the orange line is what we're calling our, we call it a management line, but basically it's either the existing dune line or the state baseline, whichever is further seaward. So that would be the most conservative approach. And you see here the avenues where those two lines overlap, where you have this dashed red line. That's where the state BCM line is seaward of the current dune line. As you get further up the island here at Access 8, the state BCM line moves landward of the toe of the dune. So now we have.
Where's the minimum healthy beach line? Is it on there or no?
Well, what we did is now we're taking these lines as our starting point, and we added 200 feet of fill, and that's this handout that you have here.
Perfect, okay.
Okay, so this shows you where our starting calculation would be at various points in the island. As we move down.
But I'm sorry, one more thing. Is the
Yes.
200 lines of fill, does that represent the minimum healthy beach, or does that represent where you're looking at the renourishment going?
That would be the new minimum healthy beach standard.
Got it, okay.
From what I'd gathered from this meeting last time was establish a new line that's not the structure line, but it's either out at the toe of the dune or the BCM line, and we're showing both those scenarios.
Okay,
That we like.
Okay.
yeah.
From there, we added 200 feet of dry sand beach from each of these three scenarios. So we have our structure line.
Which would not be called minimum healthy beach. That would be called the optimal beach, right? Really?
Not necessarily, because the optimal
Because that's
beach,
where we want to get to. We want to get to 200
Or is that the trigger?
feet.
Right. Optimum for-
from my understanding, that's what y'all wanted as the minimum, and then you would want additional sand seaward of that to account for future
We'll see. I
erosion.
think that's theoretical and
Right.
probably impossible, but let's discuss it with you. Show us.
Okay. I'll just scroll through a few more of these, where,
Dietmar, he can't show the 360 cubic yards because it goes out like 1,000 feet in that
Well,
calculation.
no, the 380 yards per foot is all relative to the structure line. If we were to use one of these different lines, then we would have a different unit volume as our minimum healthy beach.
Right,
That 380 is specific to
the structure.
looking at structures. Okay, and again, that's a arbitrary number based off of a real-world site, but needs to be taken with a grain of salt when you're looking at what's going on today on the beach, and where you're at.
Okay.
Out here at the Beechwood East area, we put the dune line kind of just seaward of the existing seawall and up against the houses. you see the BCM line as well landward of that.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't really consider that being a,
So where do I see on your chart now where you would put sand out to in order to achieve 200 feet?
so on the handout that I gave you, and Scott, do you have Wendy's email? Did you make an email this to her?
I can email it to her.
Okay.
I don't know if I have it, so.
Wendy, we will get you an email of this handout that we're looking at. Here, I'm not sure where the camera is facing there. So you may can follow along through us there, but essentially all we did is offset these lines 200 feet to provide a dry sand volume. We then converted the distance, the 200-foot distance, to a volume using the Bruin rule. And then we have a separate calculation of how much additional sand you would need based off the erosion rates.
Excellent.
So I'll let Scott kind of go through that here in just a second. He did most of this, and it took a pretty good bit of legwork to try to run all these different scenarios and present it in a way that,
We appreciate that, but that's really important for this committee.
Yeah.
yeah. I may. Is this deficit volume forward or accept? Okay.
I did just update, I just have the tables I sent to you in an email.
Okay.
That updated them.
I find the handouts more helpful than the.
Handout looks good, but we don't know how many cubic yards of sand that represents.
Well,
Just details.
Yeah.
it's
We're getting
important
there.
for him to know and then for the city to figure
could
out how much
just
it's
tell us,
costing.
We're trying to send Wendy the stuff
here we
right
go.
now. So
Okay.
she
There we
can
go.
go along.
All right.
But I guess with this handout, as we're kind of looking at that, you'll see a different width of the blue line and where the blue line overlaps the orange, or the blue shaded area would be 200 feet of sand in front of the structures, which I kind of gather is not something that, that's not the goal that we're looking for.
Is that represented also on the Beechwood property, so? The blue line looks smaller, that's why I'm asking.
Well, so the blue, there's a very light, they overlap. So
Okay.
if you look right at the very seaward end there, there's a thin section of dark orange.
Yeah.
The lighter orange is where the blue and the orange would overlap.
Okay, got it.
So there's
Okay.
really not a lot of difference there, which makes sense because there's not a lot of difference between the existing dune line and the structure line. So where the existing dune line and the structure line are, they're going to be very similar.
Right.
But up and down the island, you have a consistent 200-foot width of both colors. They just overlap in some areas and others they don't.
Okay.
The BCM fill, if I understand correctly, was not shaded, but kind of represents the dash reds line there would be a similar fill from the BCM line. Again, the BCM line is an approximation of the dune line, except where the dunes have eroded further landward of it. And we shifted that BCM line to the dune line where it went further landward. 'cause we
And
were-
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but just for clarity, if you compare where the beach ended up after the last renourishment to where it is projected on this, is it about the same?
No, the beach after the last nourishment was about 500 to 600 feet wide in certain areas, like Beechwood East. And this is only showing, at Beechwood East, a little over 200 feet wide.
So it'll be significantly less,
This is just the minimum.
at the minimum, right?
This is-
Yes, this is
We're not
not,
talking-
yeah,
Right.
this is not the nourishment plan. This
Right,
is not
okay.
an ideal. This is the minimum
Yeah.
standard, just to weigh how healthy is our beach right now according to that standard. So that you know a year or two ahead of time, is it trending towards that line? We need to pull the trigger. And that's even a separate question from when do we permit a project?
Right.
You have the project permitted ahead of time. It's just when do we pull the trigger on this scenario, either of these scenarios. So
Okay.
Hey, Stephen, I still don't have the file. Is that something you could double check on?
Over to you soon.
yeah, we're getting there. I might actually can do it
When I
quicker than you
compress
can.
it,
They're working on
it'll
it, Wendy.
Oh.
Thank you.
One of you work on it and the other
Yeah.
continues the presentation.
So I'll kind of go through the numbers here since I'm staring at it. The structured line deficit right now, we'll look at the left side, that's the island wide. That's about 382,000 yards. These are the monitoring reaches, which are referenced in the monitoring report. So reach 1's at the south end of the island, reach 6 is at the northeast end of the island. And you see the scenarios there from the structure line at the bottom. And that's kind of what we've been dealing with before. We're at 382,000 cubic yards. If we move to the BCM line, and I'm going bottom to top here, we see increases in just about every reach. Currently, reach 4, which is the area, kind of the northern half of the central part of the island, south of 53rd Avenue, has no deficit. But we see a much more significant deficit at the south end and in reach 2. Those total about 440,000 cubic yards. Even reach 3 north of the pier showing a little deficit there, but total about 750,000 yards. And then island wide, if we look at what we're calling the management line or the dune line as it currently exists, we're about a 2.7 million cubic yard deficit.
Wow.
And that's adding 200 feet of dry sand seaward of the current dune line,
Okay.
or the old dune line where the dunes are.
Why is there all of a sudden such a huge jump in reach 4, which didn't need anything at the BCM line, and now all of a sudden needs 800,000 feet?
This is reach 4, I think, right here.
That's
It's
the boundary between reach 4 and reach 5. So the analysis or the exercise was looking at if we wanted 200 feet of dry sand seaward of the existing dune line up and down the island, how much volume would it take? And that's so regardless of the,
And the difficulty, John, is as much as I'd like you to give you all of your beach,
Please.
that you have another 400 feet, as Wendy calculated it for us, of dunes that are grown over behind it, right? So there's massive amount of protection for the home. It's just that John doesn't have a beach.
Exactly.
so
Right.
this is the 53rd Avenue.
Tourists.
This was taken last week. 53rd Avenue is right here. So that's what, the condition of the beach currently looks like. The 2007 dune line is right back here. So all this is sand that's accreted. And one of the, you look at overall volumes, reach 3 and reach 4 have gained sand consistently over the past 20 years. So
Is that because of the groins that are underground there?
no, those wouldn't have anything to do with it. It's the sediment supply from the northeast end of the island via past nourishment projects has supplied.
And why
a
is
lot
the
of-
beach growing over there with the vegetation and not in the other areas of the island?
Because of the amount of sand that's been placed at the east end. You go look at, the history of the island is the shoals. Actually, I wanted to show this time lapse if I could. I'm not sure if y'all have seen Google Earth time lapse, but this is showing a series of satellite photos from 84 to 2024, I believe, 22. So not the most recent, but you can see this, they call it the river of sand, but the sand pulling off of Dewey's Inlet Delta, merging onto the shoreline at the east end of the island, and then that sand works its way south. So you're getting natural, it's these packages of sand that come on with these shoals. For thousands of years, that built out the northeast end of the island, and you were gaining sand into the ocean. Now we're not doing that. We're losing more than we're gaining, and you've had to nourish it. But the process still driving sand to the south continues, so now that nourishment sand is spreading to the south. We've been able to track that through our monitoring, and that's led to significant amount of accretion at the south end, or at the center part of the island. I can show you, apparently we have a meeting today.
So why doesn't it ever reach or rarely reach reaches 1 and 2?
So the further you get away from the north end of the island, you start to lose the signal of that flux of sand coming, but it is there. And what we're actually seeing right now in our data, it may be, we have a chart that you can see that on.
Yeah, Steven, is this where you're?
Page 10 in your packets. Looks like a hot and cold.
Oh, that, in this
Yeah.
packet? No.
No, that was in the-
that was
And
In
what
this
Douglas sent out for the meeting.
Oh,
Oh,
is that this morning?
No,
Oh, okay.
a few days ago.
This chart here,
Oh, I saw that, okay.
yeah, so
Yeah.
basically what this is showing, and it's working with nature in the real world, so it's not a clean, perfect example, but you see, this is reach 4, so this is all south of the nourishment area. Nourishment happened just before this survey, so working from north to south as you go from bottom to top in the chart, as you move this direction in time, so you're going to the time and right, and south as you go from bottom to top, we see this blue trend kind of trending up, and now we're seeing it just south of the pier, the lower part of the Reach 2 area here. We saw a lot of influx of sand over the past 6 months in that area south of the pier. So we're starting to see that signal work through Reach 2, and we'll be trending down towards Reach 1 ahead of that. The way the
So Reach 1 and 2 had an Army Corps with nourishment that started in January. And we're including that as accretion, but it's not really accretion, right?
No, it is. So these black circled areas are what we are identifying as the core placement results. And so we pointed those out. Again, the Corps placed a whole bunch of material through a pipe, and we were able to measure about 300,000 cubic yards of that remained on the beach. And we're seeing the benefits of that along the south end. I wasn't able to fly the drone recently because the wind was a little too high, but I can show you, this is what the south end looked like this morning. Again, not suggesting that this is an ideal beach by any means, but there is where a year ago water was up to these houses. Now we have close to 100 feet of dry sand in some of these areas, and there's a very large ridge and runnel attaching to the very tip of the island, right at the kind of the area that's remained eroded. This was dry last week. It washed over with the storm that we had. But this probably is 150 feet wide of sand here that's merging up to the beach. And that continues all the way around the corner and attaches back to the beach as you get further towards Breach Inlet. And all that is that core sand that they placed in the low tide is working its way up the beach profile. That's what waves do when you add sand to the system. So they added it low in the low tide zone, and it's working its way up while it's working its way south as well. So all that's,
So obviously that beach looks very ugly, but the moment you start now nourishing and putting new sand on top of it, that sand helps, that came ashore.
yeah, this is a very significant quantity of sand. I think we measured 70 cubic yards per foot gained between August and February, which is a huge amount of sand.
Okay.
It bothers me that you continue to refer to the 100 feet of sand. Joan and I couldn't come up with those numbers with the exception of 3rd Avenue, and that was at a lower tide. Now we're at a 5/8 tide. I just want to make sure that we're not like using rose-colored glasses when we do this, because we got to make decisions, and we want you to like give it to us straight so that we can figure out what to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is the photo from today. It may not be exactly 100 feet. This is the 2nd Avenue
Low tide or
area.
high tide?
This was close to high tide.
I'm sorry, what?
That'd be
avenue?
Second Avenue.
Second.
Yeah.
Right around the 3rd Avenue access. 2nd Avenue, I think, comes out right here.
Okay.
So it's recently accretional. How long it stays is still to be determined, but feel that the material that's still there is not the mud that's washing away and no longer part of that core project. The
But it
material
seems
is,
to me we're getting to places with the chart that you calculated from the orange line, even to a state where Wendy could be happy with it. Can you pull that chart back up that shows the 2.8 million of sand missing?
That table.
I think the
Yeah.
issue then
Okay.
remains that even if we executed this on the upper left-hand side and got those 2.8 million or 2.7 million, some people would feel uncomfortable to put 800,000 on John's Beach, where he's highly protected, while you
But
still,
not me, the
Well, you s-
homeowner, I don't own the home.
while you still only have 200 feet in front of Ocean Club and Beachwood East, right?
Right.
Particularly now that you're saying that the last big renourishment, you put 600 feet off beach in front of these homes.
Correct. So this
Yeah.
map that I was trying to find earlier, this shows just some various shorelines, the plus 4.5 foot contour. So what that contour is, it's just below the dry sand level, kind of the very top part of the wet sand beach. And we use that because it's a fairly consistent measurement of where the beach is. These lines show, and if you can see the scale on the bottom, the red line's 2007, 2009 is the first time we started measuring these south of 53rd Avenue. The 4.5 foot contour was where this blue line was in '09, and now we're out here, and I can give you that distance. From there to there, we're about 325 feet. This is just south of 53rd there. And you can see that continuous kind of progression of accretion due to all the sand that's been placed at the north end. So we have not been considering, placing nourishment sand on a beach that's continuing to accrete because it's just very costly. And what this photo showed, and I mentioned this last time, is when you have a highly accretional beach, it may be dry sand for a year, but vegetation will very quickly move out over it and you lose your width. Even if you're gaining sand, you can still be losing the dry sand width. So that's just something to consider.
Right, so
Yeah.
maybe some strategies there would be to fight the vegetation to some degree.
Do they let you do that? Can you take a chopper in there and?
Well, and on the other side of that is the places that have sand dunes but no vegetation. I mean, there's no chance of having vegetation save those dunes. So
Yeah.
how do you do with that?
So like at the south end where we did a dune project last year, and that dune's still holding up pretty well north of 3rd Avenue. You're starting to see some natural vegetation, but we would certainly recommend placing vegetation, manually. And we would have done that if we did not have a big project coming up that may bury that dune with additional sand. So after this nourishment project,
Okay.
we would look at sand fencing and vegetation along that entire area.
Okay.
So I shared with the town council a picture, October 15th, 2025, of the dunes getting pretty much almost entirely wiped out at 7th Avenue. We got wiped out at 6th Avenue. I know 5th Avenue got wiped out numerous times. They did a dune themselves and then Army Corps dune. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that we do not have healthy dunes on the south end, contrary to what I just heard.
Don't think I said that you had healthy dunes there. I said that there is still an existing dune along most of the area north of 3rd. There still is an erosional arc present along the area around 6th or 7th Avenue where the dune is escarped. And that is an area where you would certainly want to add additional sand during the nourishment project.
Okay. So in the project that we are approaching, where the city, with your help, is placing 1.7 to 2.6 million cubic yards of sand on the beach. At the 1.7 level, there must have been very little in these areas, because as I see on this chart, even at a 2.7 million level, we are just barely creating 200 yards of beach everywhere.
The project design is over 19,000 total linear feet of beach. That management line scenario would cover about 6 miles worth of beach. So 3,300, or 33,000 or so. No, more than that. Yeah. So we're not nourishing near the amount of area, and it's a much thicker fill. Again, these numbers here do not include any advanced fill to account for erosion. So in areas like the northeast end of the island, you would still have to add, 1 million extra yards to account for erosion occurring over an 8-year interval. So that's,
So in addition to the length of the beach, we have to there's height also, right?
Yeah, so you're looking at the profile all the way out into the water. And when we nourish a beach, you nourish it at kind of an artificial profile where it's, the dozers create a relatively flat beach and then it's pretty steep drop off. And then waves will quickly rework that sand to make it a natural profile. So you end up losing the seaward part of the beach, the berm, as that sand moves underwater to build kind of the low tide area in the sandbar.
It appears to me where this conversation is going, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the opportunity now, once in a lifetime, to put 2.6 million
Yeah.
cubic yards of sand on the beach. It appears to me it's absolutely necessary that we do that and not a ounce less. The question is where we gonna put it and over what lengths of the beach. And I'm always sorry to come back to my friend John, but his area in Reach 4, I have a hard time putting 800,000 yards of beach there where the whole entire area is well protected. It's just overgrown. We have 400 yards of beach there,
Yeah.
overgrown. We need to figure out how to make the overgrowing stop and use that 800,000 and put it at the north end where we still only have in this scenario 200 feet of beach protection before the houses are again in the ocean.
Well, if we've only got 200 feet of protection, then all we've done is we've reached the trigger.
Right.
So if the trigger is supposed to be when we're supposed to do to go through the project just to have to immediately reapply, the question is how do we reformat it now? Because I don't think we ever anticipated having the prices, I know we didn't anticipate having the prices where they are. And I'm assuming that the analysis you did were based on what you thought the prices would be. Have you had a chance to relook at it? If we were to get the maximum amount of sand that we can for the value that we can get it now, have you had a chance to reevaluate how you would do it and where you would put things?
So we certainly recommend doing the maximum project that's permitted right now, north and south end of the island, east
And
and
that
west.
is 2.6?
2.5.
2.5.
But was that, and I'm sorry, but was that based partly on what you anticipated the cost would be? I'm assuming it had to be.
It's a iterative process where we look at the data to see what's the current condition, what's our erosion rate. We have the assumptions that we went through with the ad hoc committee on how much sand are we, likely to. So that gives us a parameter that is, I think that was around the 1.2, just at the northeast end of the island, that was about a 1.2 million.
But it was also predicated in part on what you thought the cost was going to be.
Right, so then we have that budget talk and say, is this realistic and do we need to adjust? And for this particular project, we tried to make the budget meet the need, and we were pretty successful at that.
Except for now, we understand we can get more sand than we ever anticipated. So if you recalculated to see what we can do, if we were to maximize the amount of sand that we can purchase with this new value, and to change it, and hopefully maybe it'll be the test project for the future that'll prevent us from needing to have another renourishment in 6 or 8 years. Maybe we'll buy more time.
Yeah,
Go
so
beyond
we
200 feet of, add more.
Yeah, no, again, we're adding 500 to 600 feet in a lot of areas, and we have had those kind of initial talks. It would require a modification of the permit, which isn't that big of a deal.
And I know it just happened last week, so
Yeah,
it's not like I'm.
Yeah, no,
I'm-
so from the engineering side, we would say, yeah, we want to put as much sand out there as possible. It's a great price, so let's do that.
Yeah.
At some point, you create such a wide beach where you're at 800 feet or more, can owners and guests deal with walking across 300 yards of dry sand to access the water? That's a question for, council in the city, because we can build it, it's simple to build.
For 4 years it'll last. Then
Yeah, and you
the water will
understand
get
that
shorter.
after a year or two, it's already starting to go back.
It's a lot better than throwing a football and having it land in the ocean from your house. Yeah.
I understand that. It's just something that, everybody needs to be aware of. So yes, and we've talked about, another 400,000 yards could buy another 2 years worth of the erosion rates that we've seen. And it's a good deal and a good value to be able to do that.
Well, based on the amount that we collect on a regular basis from the taxation and the contributions, buying an extra couple of years would help us fund it a whole lot better in the future.
Correct.
And maybe it would change the whole way the erosion happened if we did it further out from a cyclical change.
I do believe that with these projects that have been done before, we are seeing an obvious benefit to the center and southern part of the island over time. I also believe that we are increasing the volume of sand that's within the Delta system as some of it's recycling back into, we lose some to the north into the channel. Whereas in 2007, that channel immediately took a right as it came out of the links course and hugged the shoreline and then kind of took another left to go out towards the ocean. A lot of that area is filled in. So we're increasing the sand supply that nobody cares about, but it's underwater. But long-term, talking decades, that's beneficial to the city. So you're not losing it, you're not wasting it if we do have some of that. But I do think, if we look back at the where the shoreline was in '07 up here at the northeast end of the island. Sorry.
And while you're looking, one more follow-up question. Other than the distance that it would take to walk to the beach, if it was further out there, is there any negative to having more sand?
When you create such a wide, flat berm, if we have a storm event or a king tide that gets over the seaward end of that, it can create a ponded area. Because what happens on the seaward end of the berm, waves kind of deposit a little bit of sand and it builds up a little bit. And then you can end up with a lake that may take a couple of days to drain through. We saw a little bit of that with the last project. Over the period of a couple of months or a year, nature kind of works that out, and you don't get that as often.
Is
But
that what we used to call tide pools? I mean, we used to,
it's
good for 1-year-olds to sit in.
exactly. Love it. Yeah.
It's not the worst
Sewer
of things to
water.
happen, yeah.
So
Right.
Dan, where you are coming from is you want to potentially evaluate to put more than 2.5 million yards.
I want to put as much as we can, and because we have, if we use the same funding idea that we had in place initially, that was going to cost some $32 million. What if we, and because we've got a discount, instead of pocketing the discount, why don't we put it
You
into
want to
it,
use the 32.5?
maximize it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much sand would we get if we spent the entire 32.5? Stephen, don't tell me you haven't calculated that already.
I haven't calculated the full 32 because I don't know that it's.
What's the number?
What's the number?
About 1 million.
Extra yards.
So it would be
Yeah.
3.5?
That
Wow.
does, I don't think that would include the fact that each cubic yard is shared roughly 50/50 on the north end.
Yeah.
So it'd be more than that.
Be a game changer.
Okay, all right,
you know.
yeah.
And Douglas and Dave,
was the,
what is the political will right now
what was the
in
unit
the
cost?
city of Isle of
750.
Palms to spend the 32.5 million?
It'd actually be about 1.4 million extra yards of sand.
Wow.
I don't know, Dietmar. I mean, this will be a discussion tomorrow night. The city, from my perspective, was clawing together the money to get this project done, including borrowing money for future groins. They had not figured out how to fund the $32 million. We have roughly a $10 million shortfall. As it is, I think the community association has at least a $2 million shortfall. So it was going to be a stretch to get to 32, and I don't know what council's appetite's going to be for continuing to go into debt for potentially sand that will move away at some point.
Well,
It's
I'll
a
add,
question for them.
I'll add this, if we're going to be looking at, I know we're talking about structures in the future, and I anticipate from our discussions and just following this, we're going to have some litigation attached with it, it's going to take some time to work through it. But if we're talking about adding another couple of years of having a healthy beach by putting in the more sand, it gives us more time to get through the litigation and ideally to put in the structures before the next one. So it might, while it's a short-term hit, it sounds like in the long term, we'd be saving a lot.
Well, but Dave, the other argument would be if I spend a little bit less than 32.5 and I do the whole entire 2.5 million project as it was laid out in the permit, and then use additional money in 2027 to actually build 4 or 5 groins and breakwaters, so I can protect the sand that I put on, then probably the city would feel better about it.
That's another way to look at it, yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna ask a question, I guess, and, so basically going with what was the baseline, the 1,700, the low bid was to get us to, quote, the healthy beach state of, defined from the structure that you kind of went through. Now, if we add the extra 8 or 900, is it 900? To that, what does that buy us? Does it just move the beach out? And how long does, in timeline, does that gain another, but what he said, does that actually gain another potential 2 years?
Yeah, so the simple way to look at it, which is probably too simple because you're dealing with nature and storms and all
Right.
that, but at the south end, we've lost around 30,000 yards per year. We were assuming 40,000 yards per year. Our 50,000 is kind of our background erosion rate, to be a little conservative. So an extra, the base quantity was 400,000 at the south end, which would have put you back to a condition that had more sand than at any point that we've measured it since 2009. Adding an
So
additional,
in 2021 through 24, we lost an average of 136,000 cubic yards. And you did a presentation for us, which I found super helpful, at the easement meeting in 2023, and talked about what happened in Breach Inlet, and basically the main tidal flow used to hug Sullivan's Island. And then a bunch of sand attached to Sullivan's Island, and that main tidal flow shifted closer to Isla Palms. And then you see sand shifting away from Isla Palms. So if you continue at that, crazy erosion rate, it's well over 1 million cubic yards of advanced fill that you would need. The 30,000 rate that you're calculating is from 2010 forward, and I just don't know if history of when we were super stable for a really long time is relevant to the changes in Breach Inlet and what's the forecast for the future for us.
yeah, and again, you're right on those rates. We had 2 really bad years of erosion where we lost 10 times the amount of sand that we had usually lost in that area. It somewhat stabilized before the Corps started their project, but now with the Corps project, it's gained, significantly since then. Again, we try to look at the data and the history. It was an accretional spit for decades. They built a second row of houses because of that. So the data showed, 30,000 yards. If we overweight it and say that we're losing 150,000 yards, then it just changes the financial calculus of, how often you have to renourish it. So we don't want to overshoot that, but we try to be conservative in what we think we're likely to see in the future. We did bump it up to 50,000, but regardless of what number you put there, if it's 50,000, another 400,000 extra yards above the base quantity, which the bid allows for, is 8 years worth of erosion at that rate. If you look at
So in the budget, you used 70,000 for the south rate. What was the basis for the 70,000 erosion rate? That's where you got the 560 from in the budget. Where did that come from?
that may have been one of the iterations that that kind of planning went through a couple of different iterations going through it, and it may have just been looking at a shorter term erosion cycle. Again, the picking what number you want to set as your erosion rate helps you in the financial planning, but you have to look at the actual monitoring data to see how it's performing and if you need to adjust that. And if you are more comfortable using a higher number, then it mainly all it does is it adjusts your future forecasting, but certainly would play into how much are we planning on putting out there. Regardless, 800,000 yards is more than double the amount of losses, including the erosional years that we saw at the south end over the past 15
And in the
years.
2.5 million cubic yard scenario, we would put, in addition to the 400,000 that were already planned for the south, we would put another
400,000.
400,000 in the south. So that feels
Yeah.
really good.
So we've lost 571,000 cubic yards since 2011, which is the year that FOP said we started declining. We lost 447,000 alone before you can add the Army Corps sand. So the 400 wouldn't put us back to that, so the 800 puts us over that. And that would be reflective of, if you assume that you've got high erosion coming at you, I mean, if you assume the worst-case scenario, it's over 1 million of erosion that would be added to the deficit. I don't know if 30,000 per year historically makes sense either, so I don't know how you figure that out.
I think we also want to take into account, I say this with a huge grain of salt, but what the Corps has told us they intend to do at the south end. The work that Cottrell did was very quick and efficient and beneficial with their 200 or more thousand yards that they placed. The Corps has said that they're going to do that every 3 years or so. Doug, tell me if I'm wrong here.
That's correct.
Until it's there and happening regularly, you want to be a little cautious with it, but that could be a very significant offset to any of the background erosion. And with this project, could set you up very well in the future for very limited action there at the south end.
Stephen, it seems like very easy for the city to move forward with a project that would be 2.5 million cubic yards.
Yes.
You mentioned now several times that could be extended, and I heard you say, if I'm not mistaken, by maybe 400,000 yards before we really have to do something more serious about a new permit?
Now, any additional sand will require a permit modification, which should not be a very difficult process to go through, because you're not changing the footprint of the project. If we're not changing the footprint of the project, we have plenty of material in the Barra area to be able to make that change. It really is looking at the the finances and what the cities and
So whether
stakeholders are willing
we
to
added
spend.
400 to it or 800 to it, it would be doable.
Yes.
Okay, so it's about the financial consideration for the city.
And as long as everybody's aware of what the expectation of that post-project beach looks like, and it'll be very
And you
significant.
said, as long as it doesn't change the footprint of the project, if you were to renourish the beach, not just in those 3 areas that you had outlined so far, but on a little bit broader scale, maybe taking John's Reach 4 out, would that be a different scope of the project? Because now you have more landing spots for the dredger to land the sand on?
Yeah, the way we went through the permitting was we allowed for flexibility to place sand anywhere north of 53rd Avenue to the northeast end of the island. So we have some flexibility within that area. If we were to extend outside of that area, either from the south or from the north, we would have to go back out for public notice, notify those adjacent property owners, and that's probably a 15 to 30-day public notice period. It's not the end of the world, it just is a little bit bigger of an effort.
That's good. No problem.
I've got to step, and I'm going to rejoin online. in a few
I heard,
minutes.
yes,
All right,
thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, the limits of the permit are on that map. You can see the black
Excludes
line,
John's area specifically.
right up to John's area,
But it's not a
53rd.
big area. It's a good thing I'm here.
There will be a lot of sand coming there immediately after the project.
That was, I was gonna kind of follow, that was where I was going on that after. So adding on the south end, Breach Inlet, an additional 400 basically would buy us potentially another 6 to 8 years before we would we would be in the condition we are now.
We don't want to ever get there, though,
Well,
back to that, right?
That's what I'm
That's the whole
saying, is
idea.
that's, again.
It's
if
it's planned
you
for 8, but it potentially goes to 14 if you add.
If you add this
Okay.
So you would
additional
still
sand,
do it.
you could still do it earlier, and we could, yeah.
And that's what
Move
the
up.
triggers would do. The triggers, we'd be watching these monitor
And we would
reports.
potentially shift our
We'd know when
trigger.
to start, the trigger would start the process of getting permits, getting ready to go to action to do one of these projects. So that is the intention of those triggers, to keep it from getting back to this condition.
But that's assuming that we continue to erode at what you estimated.
Can I bring something up? I talked to Wendy about this
Sure.
yesterday. A terminal groin at the foot of the island to capture the sand that we're putting up. I think you mentioned that you've done a terminal groin on, is it St. Helena's? Or some-
We did a terminal groin on Folly Beach.
Folly Beach.
And other groins at Hilton Head and Devido.
Right, is it similar to where the structure of our island at the bottom?
Folly Beach would be very similar, yes.
Okay, and that would, like, hopefully capture sort of the sand and reduce the.
And we absolutely want to get there, John.
Yeah.
It's just not
Well-
on the agenda right now today.
Well, I just want, okay, I want to say one thing though. These things take a long time to get, and I think I think doing a groin here is a very simple project that we should consider starting now. It'll take a year, 2 years to
John,
get it
you have my
done.
commitment that we will. We
But-
have to wait until the end of the Fourth Olson study.
To show that it'd be beneficial to do
So
it.
Right, I understand
That's
that,
at
but
least
I
Another
think,
2 months or 3
okay,
months.
I understand that.
And then in 3 months from now, I will personally guarantee you that we are bringing forward a decision to city council to consider something about hard structures, whatever it may be.
All right, well,
But we are 3 months away from that, and we know from the discussions with him and with Fort Olson that that permit will be a 12 months period. So
exactly.
we're not gonna get those groins before the end of 2027. Right?
Well, every month counts.
Likely not getting a permit before then, depending on how, the nourishment plays out and performs. There still may be sufficient sand to satisfy the traffic capacity of a structure there. I'm not sure if y'all have seen, I sent the city a document on kind of what groins are and some pros and cons and just things to consider a year or two.
Yeah,
year or
this
two
group,
ago.
I don't think this group would have that,
Many
but I could
do.
send it.
It's very kind of high level, but just some thoughts on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So
So-
where I was continuing on.
Yes. Please.
Now, dumping sand on the north end of the island, and again, if we go excess quantities of it, again, there's a migration to the south end. So how does that affect, and again, there are just several things that I'm like, how much benefit do we get by moving the beach out further? As opposed to other things that we could do, like again, sand preservation, again, go based on budget, is if we spend all the money now, then where do we get money to try to preserve the dunes that we establish? And is it better to scale back a little of that to do more preservation over the next years? Those are questions that I kind of have. Again, the effect of the northern renourishment has on the south end of the beach plays into this. And I guess my third kind of thought in there was, a major storm could wipe all this out in a year. Is that true?
Yeah, for that last point, a major storm doesn't usually wipe out a project in a year. You will certainly get erosion, but a lot of times that sand, any storm event, a beach is designed to, take the brunt of that storm. That storm takes sand from the high beach, the dunes, and it pushes it into the low water, and then you get a post-storm recovery where that sand kind of comes
Start
back.
moving back.
So you may get some shifting, but it's not like the sand just disappears. You can and will certainly lose some, and we've been successful getting FEMA to reimburse us for those losses in past projects. And having a qualified beach is a great tool there. Like if we focus in on the Beechwood area where, we put 600 feet of dry sand out there in 2018. And by, 2023, it's already getting very narrow. 2024, houses are, almost in the water. That's, not a sustainable long-term strategy of just keep putting that much sand out. Because again, once you get to, okay, well, let's put 1,000 feet of beach. That may only be there for a year before it's 800 and then 600 and then you're back. But you're really altering the usability of the beach, for a year or two there, for people being able to actually get out there. And that's where we would look at, putting a small growing field in that acts as your emergency protection. And then when the beach is healthy, it's buried. That's a viable plan. With this particular bid, I'd still say let's maximize the quantity we can place, because you're buying yourself time to either implement those structures or, any sand placed at the north end is eventually benefiting the rest of the community, even if it's, 10 years down the road before it gets to the south end. So you're not wasting your value there.
So my intention was with this committee that at our next meeting on April 2nd, which is still prior to the city making their decision on the 24th, we would finalize a resolution defining our new standard for a desired healthy beach and for a minimum healthy beach. And then maybe, Wendy, we can work in the meantime on how that resolution looks like so that we can actually then move it on April 2nd. And at this particular meeting, I had in mind that we move the resolution to at least, since the city is starting to meet on the topic tomorrow, to move a resolution that at least declares that we as a beach renourishment committee are interested that the city is moving in the direction of 2.5 million cubic yards of sand as opposed to any of the lower scenarios that are allowed in our permitting process.
Second.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And I put this out in writing, you all received it, I can, I think I sent it to you, Doug, too, just that you know, Stephen, this is what we're talking about. Dave, you got it?
I got it, Bill.
Douglas? And it's a very simple resolution, right? It says, "The Beach Preservation Committee of the City of Isle of Palms recommends today to the City Council that the city, in coordination with the Wild Dunes Community Association, contracts the maximum amount of sand, 2.6, I need to reduce this now to 2.5 million cubic yards, to be placed on the Isle of Palms beaches during the upcoming nourishment project in summer, fall of 2026. Leaves open exactly where it goes, because that goes back to the definition of what's a healthy beach look like in the minimum beach requirements. And then I give some very simple reasonings. One is the 1.6 million just feels completely inappropriate to where we want to go to. Second, the 2.6 million will allow us to go wider and deeper in the beaches. Three, we will never really have the chance to get sand that cheap again, ever. And then finally, as a member now of the Wild Dunes Community Association Board, I can tell you that Wild Dunes would be very supportive of this. So those are some of the reasons I put on here in order to move this forward.
Could I add a couple of comments on this first point? I think it's probably not necessary, but I think the 1.6 million would give everybody 200 feet of dry sand at project completion. But if you're looking at the end life of the project, 8 years from now, that's when you're likely not to have that scenario. And it's a minor distinction. Not everywhere on the island, within the project limits, where the sand is being placed.
What do you mean, so, well, okay.
In the three areas.
Yeah.
Let's do-
And just on a kind of the bigger picture is we were hoping to have this be a 2.5 million yard project. The reason the bid included a base quantity of the 1.6 million is just to ensure that when we go out for bid, if the costs are higher than we anticipated, it still would, the base project would fall within the budget that the city had so that you had a viable project. We do think it would be a viable project at 1.6, but it wouldn't be the project we wanted to have. The maximum project is, we would certainly support that, encourage that, think the prices, make it make sense to do the maximum project at the 2.5 million. So I don't want,
Do we,
go ahead, Winnie.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do we have a budget for terminal growing already established or no?
Wendy, we have guessed at $4 million is what's in our kind of placeholder budget for next year.
All right, we have a motion on the table. I heard, John, you second that. Is that right?
I did.
Can I hear all that are for this motion? Aye.
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 Dave, are you still on? Dan, are you still on by any chance? Wasn't he supposed to? All right. 100% of 4.
That's good. That works.
All right, with that, I would like to move on to the next topic, if that's okay. And I think Let me look around here to my vice chairman. Wendy, do we need to go through the report as our second agenda point under 3 was calling for? Or shall we move directly to the bids? Because we basically
Bids
discussed.
might be a more urgent discussion.
Exactly, right?
yeah.
Because we moved in and out of that report discussion already a couple of times.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's move on to number 3, the review of the bids. Would you do us maybe a favor, Stephen, to give us an overview from your professional judgment of the bids that came back? For us, it looks like there were 5 bids received. 2 of them looked pretty uninteresting, and 3 of them looked a lot better. And then out of 3 that looked a lot better, there was one that looked very, very good. And you probably have more insights, and then we have more questions.
Okay, sure. So I was very pleased to have 5 bids. Most of the projects in South Carolina, usually you get Marinex, Great Lakes, and Weeks being the bidders for those. Callan Marine is a group out of Texas that has never bid on a project and that we're aware of in South Carolina, at least any of the ones that we've done. Norfolk Dredging is out of Virginia, and the big picture is moving the project to the summer really opened up the availability of the dredges to be eager for the work. Both Norfolk and Great Lakes and Marinex have equipment working in South Carolina that would be finishing up, and then they would have, which allowed them to have a more favorable mobilization.
You said that was true for Marinex and for Norfolk?
And Great
And
Lakes.
Great Lakes. Great Lakes is currently working in the Grand Strand with hopper dredges for the most part, which is a different type dredge.
But still, the mobilization costs are double that of Norfolk and quadruple that
Yes.
or triple that of Marinex.
So with these type of bids, contractors can kind of take some leeway in how they're going to structure their bid. Some of them will put more weight on the mobilization as opposed to the unit cost. Great Lakes they tend to come in with a pretty low unit cost for pumping, but their mobilization may be high. Norfolk, I think, had very favorable pricing on both of them, the mob and the unit price. Marinex tends to be a little higher on the unit price and a little lower on the mob because they are South Carolina based.
Okay.
So you have all these different things that kind of play into it, but really opening up them for the summertime dredging, the availability of the equipment, and then we try to design projects that are very favorable to contractors. From the logistics standpoint, designing bar areas and good cut depths and make it easy for them to build, but then also just some of the conditions that we hold them to for how they go about getting paid and building it. And I think that reflects pretty well on some of the bid prices we have for a lot of our jobs. So I think that played into it as well. Weeks and Callan, I just think they didn't have a great feel that they were going to be competitive with the industry's tight. They know who's going after what, and they threw in a high number. Just if they got it, great, they'll get paid. And
Where's
but,
Weeks?
based out of Louisiana, but they're a global company. They do a lot of big projects. Overall, very, very favorable in all regards. I've spoken with Marinex. They're very eager. We've done projects with them at Debadew, Pawleys Island, Litchfield. They're doing Hilton Head right now. They did Folly Beach County Park for us and Folly Beach for the Corps. They've worked in North Carolina a lot, Savannah River. So they are very experienced, do a good job. They're probably the smallest of those 3 companies, but are based here in Charleston. So I have no qualms at all about recommending them as the apparent low bidder.
Okay.
What else? They have two main cutter head dredges. One's called the Savannah, and their larger one's the Wadmalaw. They would probably bring the Wadmalaw for this job and could potentially bring two dredges at the same time.
Well, let me ask a question that involves you as well as Douglas. Is the normal procedure of the city now to take one of these bids as is? Or is the normal procedure of the city now to take two of the most promising and have them compete more against each other?
Choose the one is our typical process. I don't know that there's even flexibility to have them compete against each other after the fact. We've never done it.
Well, let
Could
me
be that
just
we
put
could.
it in this way. I've negotiated many of these contracts. If I were in your shoes and I looked at this bid from Marinex, which looks good, I would go back to them and say, hey, somebody else bid another $5.75 per cubic yard and you're bidding $7.52. You're gonna win this project, but you're gonna have to give it for us for $5.75 extra per cubic yard of sand. That part of the negotiation you wouldn't execute?
We have never done that. I don't know if we could, but we could certainly look into if we could or we couldn't. Have to be done. I mean, we have a city procurement code that governs how we have to do it. It follows the state legislation on how municipal governments are to do their procurement. Unaware of that happening. We've never done it, as I've indicated. But not to say, I could certainly look into it and see if it's
Have you ever
possible.
seen that, Stephen, and would you recommend to do that or not?
I have not seen it for any project. I've not seen where you would open it up to the two low bidders and have them recompete for it. We've had times where certain communities' procurement codes requires three bidders, so they would have to rebid a project. If they only had two bidders, if a bid comes in above a budget, then they may have to rebid it to try to either change the scope or have the contractors, look at it again. We have negotiated with the low bidder before for various things, and a lot of times, though, that happens with like a private HOA that has more flexible procurement policies. But
Well, Douglas is willing to go aggressive.
yeah, I
I
would
do
say
see in our
that
code that seal bids are not to be negotiated in the event that all bids are rejected because the amount of the bid, the purchasing agent is authorized in situation where the city's best interest precludes resolicitation to reduce the scope, to negotiate an adjustment in the bid price, including changing the bid specs in order to bring the bid within the amounts of the funds deemed appropriate by city council. So it appears to say that in our code that we're not to negotiate sealed bids.
I leave that up to Dave to address the code in future council meetings.
I would
Seems
just
like a pretty
say,
bad code if you ask me.
yeah, from our experience, I don't think that they're likely to come off of that. That's an incredibly
Okay.
low mobilization. They are working around hurricane season.
It's like half the price.
And just
I know.
from a personal standpoint, having, having them on good terms, especially during hurricane season, that company in particular is willing to try to help out as much as possible. And, I'd look for those opportunities as the project progresses.
Yeah.
So what is the timing of Marinex? You keep referring to hurricane season. I'd also heard at one point in time, starting in June. Where are we at with things?
From my understanding with them, and this is not anything I can hold them to right now, but they would be looking to try to start the work in June, and potentially mobilizing some of the equipment a little earlier than that. That seems to work pretty well within the city's timeframe. They would have until December 31st to complete the project, but they want to get going as quickly as they can. I know they're still completing some work at Hilton Head. I don't think that would prevent them from moving up here. They may get creative in how they accomplish that if they're not done when they want to be done. But it would be earlier than later.
And to, Wendy's point, if there is a hurricane approaching, they would stop obviously the work. Is this what the standby time, for instance, covers in the bid?
No, standby time is more if the city tells them that they need to stop working for some reason, that's kind of the city's fault, then the contractor would have the ability to charge the city for that standby time.
So if they have
But
to
acts of
stand by
God-
because of bad weather, that's on them.
Yeah, they build in their weather, hurricanes, whatever, they would pull their equipment, move back into Charleston Harbor and ride it out and then come back. And the way these projects are completed is every 100 foot of shoreline, they survey the beach before and after they place the sand. And as soon as they've surveyed and said this section's complete and full, then it's paid and done and they move back. So if we have a hurricane that hits, in the middle of the project, anything that they have certified as before, that's paid quantity. Anything that they haven't, they would have to come back and refill that to the design spec. And should we have, significant damage from a major storm, we would look for opportunities to negotiate a change order to increase the quantity or, otherwise account for that damage. And it
Is
happens.
your intention, Stephen, to make a recommendation to council about choosing a particular contractor?
Yes, we would recommend choosing Marinex based off the bid
I
price.
thought so.
And for the full permitted schedule.
And for the public, I have to say that many, Douglas, Andrew from Wild Dunes Community Association, Dave, I, and many from the city council were at this Hilton Head conference and had the chance to see the work of this particular firm in action on Hilton Head. I personally spoke to the guy who showed us the operation going on and was nothing but impressed. So it seems like a very good firm.
They're a very good firm. We've done a lot of projects with them. They care about South Carolina work, and they kind of value the local aspect of it. All these contractors we work with, most of them, they all do very good work, but, so we would recommend Great Lakes or Norfolk either. But with the bid price, there's no reason not to.
And Douglas, the council is discussing this tomorrow?
That's correct, yeah. They'll have a general discussion tomorrow, similar kind of recap of the process from Stephen. Then the Wild Dunes Community Association will also be kind of deliberating on what they would favor in terms of the size project. Then ultimately, city council would be expected to consider awarding a bid at their April meeting. So kind of take back the feedback of the community association and weigh their
So if we
options and
wanted
make
to
a
weigh
judgment.
in as well and provide council a recommendation from our committee, we could do that at our next meeting on April 2nd.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, that would be, I think, the 28th, fourth Tuesday,
28th.
28th. So anytime before the 28th.
Are there any other questions from our committee for Stephen on the bid results?
Just have a quick one. You had mentioned, or somebody mentioned, maybe Douglas it was, in the email that there's going to be some potential changes to the schedule. Did I read that wrong?
That's good.
The schedule of work, or which schedule, Wendy, do you recall? I'm not remembering a
Based
schedule.
based on the bid information, you had said that we've got a low bid, but there may be some changes to the timeline or something like that. So I was concerned that maybe it was going to get pushed back or something. I just
No.
wanted to confirm.
I don't know, I don't recall that conversation.
Okay, I may have misread it or something.
Oh, I have one last question for you. We were asked at one of the Wild Dunes open houses on this topic, whether there's already a planned schedule in terms of which of those reaches you would address at which months or which timeline. Is that existing yet or not?
It does not exist yet. We are going to have some meetings with Marinex, at least, if not another contractor, to go over potential schedules. It is critically important to note that dredge schedules are notorious for not being maintained. So once we actually get going with the project and they start moving, you can have a little bit better idea. We leave it up to the contractor to determine their own methods of construction, which would be where do they start, what direction do they go? And we have told them that if it's okay with you, we would like you to start up at the north end where the erosion is most critical.
Yeah.
And then move to the south end. But if there's some factor that makes it advantageous for them to do one or the other, they have that availability.
I don't
But we
have to
should
tell
that.
you that we are approaching peak summer season, and we have two major hotels in Wild Dunes, as well as many, many rental units along the shoreline. And so it's pretty important for those people who are renting out hotel rooms or houses to understand in which week, in which months, they have a complete chaos going on and can't potentially rent their places.
Yeah, we will try to let you know at least where they're starting the large scale kind of schedule. But even with a week or two notice ahead of time, we will not be able to tell you if they're going to be in front of what condo or house when. They're just too, we were working on a project up in Horry County, our Acadian Shores, that was supposed to start in early February, and for every week, they've told us it's going to start next week, and it's still waiting on it to start next week. And that's a separate.
Am I right when I recall the 2018, when they were pumping the sand, it didn't really take up the whole beach, right?
No,
You
so
could
yeah.
swim to the left of it or the
Yeah.
right of it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
normally, and when you have a really wide fill section, like we're gonna have, they move a little slower up and down the beach. So they'll cordon off a 500 to 1,000-foot section where they're actively working. They will try to maintain a path along the landward side where you have enough room to do that, so that people can go from one side or the other.
Right.
As soon as they finish the section, they open it up and people can go out on it.
Yeah.
But in areas where there's just not enough room, like around Ocean Club and part of Beechwood right now, they would probably have to close that entire section for a couple of days.
I got you, right. But it would be in days, not a week at a time.
At the south end, when they just did the recent stuff, that's exactly what they did. It was never hard to find somewhere around where they were working.
go.
This is
Yeah.
a bigger project than the south end, more equipment, and they will likely have more area cordoned off than that.
But they always
But
left a
it's-
path
Yeah, but,
if was able to.
yeah,
if they were
you should be
able
able to do that along
Yeah.
most of the south end.
Anything else for Steve on this topic? Then I think, Stephen, thank you very much, and
Yeah,
you are
thank you
released
very
for
much.
today.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I
We'd like to
appreciate it.
welcome you back often.
Okay, I've got some old, well, there's the dip tab, but
I don't think I have what you submitted, or what you had hard copies of.
Handout.
Wendy would
And I have a few more things, so please don't leave me
Oh,
just
okay.
yet. The meeting is not over.
send to Wendy.
yeah, the primer, I emailed you the other day.
Yeah.
I miscounted the number of those I've had, but I've got that, the bid tab, and then,
I have the bid tab. I think they have the bid.
Yeah.
This,
I just sent that to Wendy.
Oh, okay.
I sent a link to her that she should be able to download it from.
Wendy, you got a link from Scott Fennis on the handout today?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right, we'll be sure you get that.
okay. And here's some old, just white paper reports and journal articles that we've done over the history, if you are curious and
We're
need some
curious.
good reading at
We
night.
read them out, we read them.
If you want digital versions, I can send out the digital versions of that, so.
Thank you.
I'll leave that there. So, all right, thank you.
I'm going to move on to number 4, miscellaneous business. I wanted to discuss one thing before we just talk about the next committee meeting. And that is, and this ties back, Douglas, into the approval of the first committee meetings. Because I provided a little bit of a schedule of what I think this committee should be working on, based on the input that the city gave us and our discussion that we had at the very first meeting. I didn't send it to you, but I can read it to you as we go along here. The major difference from the minutes, and that's why I wanted to come back to that, is, Douglas, you said, I paraphrase a little bit, I don't want this committee to get involved with the current project. We obviously disagreed with you. That disagreement, I don't find in the minutes, and I certainly said, and it was basically echoed by all of the committee members, we want to get involved in it. It's not that we don't want to do all the other things that the city wants us to do, like looking into hard structures, looking at future management practices and all that other good stuff, but we do feel responsible as a beach renourishment committee to help you with what we are already doing, the definition of what a healthy beach should look like. We feel that we should be involved in this contractor selection. We feel that you don't have the time, and city council doesn't have the time, but we do have the time to actually look after the project while it's going on every month, every week. And so when we see things happening that we don't like, or we feel are getting off track, then I think this committee wants to be involved in it. And that's what I wanted to add to the minutes, so that there was a disagreement there, and we as a committee decided we want to work on this. If council has a problem with it, I think they will get back to me, but I already talked to the mayor, he's totally okay with it. I'm talking to Scott Pierce tomorrow, and I think he will be okay with it too. And so that's just what we wanted to do. Other than that, you can see here in the 12 points that I put together, defining a healthy beach, understanding bidder responses and give our recommendation to the city, reviewing ongoing renourishment project, discussing the Fourth Olson study on beach management alternatives, identifying, consulting with additional experts in erosion control on what should be done as it relates to hard structures, recommended to council the best way forwards regarding erosion control structures, building consensus among the council, Wild Dunes Community Association, the DES, and various environmental group to actually implement the solution that this committee is recommending as it relates to hard structures, identifying, discussing, recommending further measures that the council should be considering, like fences, vegetation, and others to create healthy dunes, identifying, discussing, recommending annual maintenance activities that the city should be entertaining to maintain the beaches, studying, understanding, recommending to council prudent ways to finance future beach nourishment efforts, which is what we had on the agenda one meeting ago, and then you and I decided not put it on the agenda for this meeting because it really is not urgent, so we can do this in future meetings. Identifying, exploring, and recommending local, state, federal funds that the city should be considering to access, and identifying, exploring, recommending partnerships that the city should be considering relative to beach nourishment. For instance, any partnership with the city of Mount Pleasant or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or others. That's, I think, what we should be doing. And we don't need to decide on that today, but I'd like the committee members to read it and then input in it, and maybe we finalize it at the next meeting as well.
Can you
Next.
email that to me?
Yes,
And
I
I'll put-
will.
I'll put it
I was
in-
gonna ask you the same thing, because I just wrote notes all over mine.
And we'll include that in the packet for your next.
Okay. And our next meeting is April 2nd, Douglas, right? I
Correct.
am very committed to try to keep that meeting to an hour. I know that city staff had a lot of other things to do and a lot of committees to attend to. And now that we have so many discussions already on the topic of what a healthy beach looks like, I think we can finalize it at the next meeting. So as an agenda, I think we should revisit what I just talked about in terms of the focus of this committee. We should finalize the description of a healthy beach, both in terms of what's the long-term vision versus what's maybe the emergency situation at which the city should be acting. Then we should be finalizing our recommendation to the city about the dredger. And then I believe, Douglas, we asked Fourth Olson to come back to us to give us an interim report at the April meeting. Is that right?
Was that the time?
I
Yes, it
think so.
was.
So those would be
Yeah.
the 4 topics for the next meeting.
I feel like
Any-
he wanted 2 meetings, is it right? I think we,
Three?
uh,
You gave
3
it
with
a
Fourth
little-
Olson.
no, I mean, but he was telling us that he wouldn't be ready for the next one, but I guess that next one was the last one. So I
Yeah,
think that is
exactly.
correct.
So I'm
Okay.
envisioning that we probably have him back in April, and
Okay.
then we probably have him back in June or
Yep.
so, and we leave May out again.
Yep. Very good.
Anything else we need to discuss at the next meeting? It's probably already a full meeting if we
Probably
want to
enough,
keep
yeah.
it to an hour,
Yeah, I think so.
okay? Wendy, you're good?
I'm good, thanks.
Feel better,
Can't
Wendy.
talk.
You seem to be not good. You seem to be not healthy.
She's,
I am not healthy. I've had a fever for 5 days.
Please get healthy. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting at 2:51?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Feel better, Wendy.
thank you.
My sister had a similar thing happen. She just could not shake, could not shake.
It went through my house.